You're inside the Press Box. Christian FM Sports presents Inside the Press Box, where we discuss all sports from our favorite high school team to college and pro. Here's your hosts, Paul Tipton and Gary Paris.
Hey, Vero Nation, thanks for joining us in the Press Box. Paul Tipton along with Gary Paris, as Vero Beach has now gone through 8 weeks of football now. And they'll get set for Week 9. It's going to be a big week as we head into homecoming week and another district matchup against Martin County. But before we talk about the Tigers, we got to talk about last week with the Eagles and Centennial. And Gary, we didn't think for a while we were ever going to get to this game as we sat through a lightning delay for 2 hours. And, it gave us a lot of time to catch up on everything, with downtime like that. So there were some benefits to that. But ultimately, once the game got started, it was over fairly quickly, which you were hoping this to be the case for Vero Beach, just because you always worry about, will Vero come out and play to their capabilities, or will they play according to the opponent?
Yeah, you never want to play down to your opponent when you're a favored team and you're the one of the top teams in your district or your area. You never want to play down. You want to make them play up to beat you, and that wasn't going to happen on Friday night. From the beginning, after a 2-hour delay, we got to know each other a lot better than because we had nothing else to do but sit around. And we tried to keep it alive ourselves for a half hour, but the storm was. You have to be 10 miles. The storm has to be like the lightning has to be 10 miles away from you. What was it? 8.5 miles.
I know.
It was like Indria Road.
Getting right to the edge.
Right to the edge.
Yeah.
And we were there, and we finally saw some lightning at the end, and then it scooted on out in the ocean. And we came out and started playing ball. Right from the beginning, you could see before the game, I really thought this was going to be a blowout on our part. I thought we would blow them out, and we did. We looked sharp. I mean, really, really, really. And I'm not trying to take anything from Centennial, but Centennial is struggling. They've had a rough year. They're 0-6 for a reason going into that game because they just aren't that good.
Right.
And they had a lot of kids transfer. Matter of fact, a lot of their kids, when their coach left last year, a lot of those kids came up to Vero Beach. A lot of kids went over to Treasure Coast, to different schools in the area with the open enrollment. So when we played them, we looked at them. I've seen their film on them. I've played their JV twice, and we beat them both times pretty good. And I just had a good feeling that we were going to do the same thing to them once we got the game started. And it didn't take long.
No, it didn't. And, Vero Beach, made short work of everything. And, of course, when you have a late start like that, you hope that you can kind of, speed the game up, so to speak. And you do. When you get to a running clock, it certainly speeds it up. And we actually probably got there a little faster than maybe coach even wanted to because, the downside to a running clock is you lose opportunities for reps, not just with your starters, but like, your second and third team guys don't get a chance to really. They deserve it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, it makes it's such a double-edged sword at times because of the running clock. You don't want to see kids out there unnecessarily, when they don't need to be out there and potentially could get hurt. But at the same time, there's nothing like live scrimmage, type of situation and get a chance to get your guys in there. And the reward factor, too. You always got to remember, these kids practice all week long. Second, third teamers are practicing just as much as the first teamers. And, that's part of the reward is to get to play in the game.
If I'm not mistaken, Paul, I think we had, 28 points in the first quarter?
Mm-hmm.
28 points in the first quarter. Then we got the ball back. We went down and scored, made it 35-0 about halfway through the second period.
Yeah.
And their coach wanted the running clock. Coach Jankowski really didn't want to do it until halftime because he wanted to give some playing time to some other guys on the
right.
And he wanted his starters to finish with the last possession opportunity because when the clock runs, you'd be lucky if you get one possession a game, depending on how many times the team takes it, a long drive or whatever. When you got all your extras in there, but he agreed to it, and it was 35-0 at halftime, and the clock just ran completely the second half.
Yeah, the whole second half and part of the second quarter.
Yeah, part of the
yeah.
And it was like we were sitting there. You're like, well, they get a good drive. They had a good drive. May have been 5 or 6 plays for them, but then officials would talk, and then you know how you do. And next thing you know, it's the third quarter's over with, and then the fourth quarter's over with, and again, and I'm going to say this: you and Coach Jay your stats are pretty good. Have like Tyler Aronson now. He's played 7 games. Most people would think by now you have maybe 1,800 to 2,000 yards of passing in your career, 24 touchdowns or something in 7 games.
Sure.
Because that's he's bad. But this young man has been denied. He's only gotten to play one half of a game in 4 games.
True.
We've had running clocks, and the other 3 we got beat.
So it's basically
we had running clocks in 4.
He's basically played 2 games.
He's actually his stats.
Yeah.
He's got close to 1,400 yards, and when you only get to play a half of those games, 4 of those games, your numbers are going to be misleading to our fans.
True.
And then Miami Western, Northwestern, he had to play the whole game.
Yep.
Colonial, he played the whole game. Palm Beach Gardens, he played the whole game. The rest of these games, he was
Colonial.
Did I say Colonial? Palm Beach Gardens.
What schedule are you playing?
Palm Beach Gardens. I said Colonial. I'm sorry. Colonial's out of Orlando. That's what we played. But he's only.
So we had the 3 games where he played pretty much start to finish would have been Miami Northwestern, would have been Palm Beach Gardens, and probably Sanford Seminole.
That's what I meant to say. Sanford
not
Seminole.
Colonial.
Colonial, but Sanford Seminole. Wow. It's early in the morning here, folks. So
just keep telling yourself
keep
that
drinking,
one.
Yeah. There
keep
you
telling
go.
yourself
But that, again, my point being is misleading is the fact that he's only got 1,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, and you would think that, and 5 interceptions.
Yeah.
But he's had a fantastic season, and he's only played really, like you said, about half the quarters.
Yeah, he's pretty much he's averaging just under 200 yards a game. In passing, and I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this and going, well, boo hoo, you've only lost 1 game, and this really isn't about spilled milk or anything like that. This is just saying that for a guy that really can throw the ball very well, you would think, especially if you were just doing the eye test of these games, you would think, I'm sure his numbers have just got to be gaudy. Well, they're really not, because he doesn't get to play an entire game. And so because of that, the numbers aren't what you would expect or what we've seen from prior quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
I do think, he's sitting, just under 1,400 yards on the season right now. I do think he still has an opportunity to hit the 2,000 mark. It's still a ways away, but if he can stay, that average or maybe just increase it by a little bit, he should get there.
I think he's going to get it the next 2 games, 3 games, because Martin County's a tough opponent, and
True.
He'll get to play a lot of that game. And Treasure Coast, we all know about Treasure Coast. He'll get to play a lot of that game in Columbia. Most likely is they're not having the year that they would like. Somebody asked me about your strength of schedule, and I said, listen, last year we had 4 teams in the playoffs
from our district.
Mm-hmm. This year we're going to have 2 probably.
Most likely.
Yep. 2 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And if we beat Treasure Coast, and Treasure Coast, because of their strength of schedule, will probably fall in there somewhere in the top 8.
Correct.
So we go from 4 to 2. We don't know that when we make these schedules are made up. You got to play your district teams.
Right. Exactly.
And a year ago, they were all 4 of them were pretty good. We don't know what Northwestern's going to have an off year this year. Mm-hmm. They played everybody close.
Right.
And they're still a good team. And the thing that I'm leading up to is that our schedule is not as tough. We did play Seminole and we are playing Treasure Coast, and it's not as tough as some of the others. But again, when you make your schedule, your district, you put out, you've got, these things are made several years. We do a home and away with some of these schools over a 2-year period. Mm-hmm. So you got to play the schedule you got. You got it in front of you, you play it, and
right. And again, you know, I know this is going to sound like a broken record, but you can't, I don't think, overemphasize the fact of the open enrollment has dramatically changed the landscape of the game in these programs. So, for instance, Wellington last year was a playoff-bound team. They lose their coach. They lost over 40 players from the program left. You don't just make that up in a blink of an eye. And that's probably going to affect that team for probably a good 2, 3, maybe 4 years. Now, you don't know that from a 2-year contract that's going to happen. So all of a sudden you got a team that you know was in the playoffs a year ago, and you're thinking, all right, this is looking good for our strength of schedule. Yeah. Now all of a sudden it's a detriment to your schedule. You know, same thing with Centennial. Centennial made a coaching change. And yes, we would have had to play them regardless because they're a district opponent. But still, you're thinking, like last year, we had 4 teams from our district, and Centennial was one of those 4 teams that was in the playoffs last year. You're thinking, man, these guys, they got a lot of guys coming back. They should be solid this year. At the very least, it will help your strength of schedule. Well, they haven't won a ball game. They lost their coach. They lost a lot of players. All of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, that team dramatically changed. So it's going to be interesting going forward, Gary, to see how a lot of programs deal with the open enrollment and how not it just affects their program, but it affects how they schedule going forward.
Absolutely. And the other little scenario that's being tossed around state of Florida is NIL.
Yeah,
we talked a little bit about it on the game last week during the airtime, but the NIL, I mean, Georgia was the last state to approve it. So there's 30 states out there now have approved NIL. Now, how they're going to regulate it, how they're going to manage it, and how they're going to do it, I don't know. I'm waiting to see.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
I'm waiting, and I understand they're out there wanting Florida to do the same thing. And here's the deal with that, folks. There will be kids, for example, let's say you want to go to Georgia, University of Georgia. All right, you live in Arizona. You may go to one of the top-notch schools in Georgia to be close to Georgia, so you go up, visit the coaching staff, and get to know them and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And if you're a top kid, then you have open enrollment because you move to Georgia, and then you go with this NIL money they give you. You might end up with $10,000 or so. Or more. I don't know how much they're going to do in high school. I can't imagine them trying to give hundreds of $1,000s to high school kids. And that's just like in college. I think it's so silly to give freshmen, guys that are coming in that have not played a college down yet, mm-hmm. the money that a lot of these kids are getting out of high school to come play.
Well, you saw what they did over in Utah. Every single kid on the roster was 85 kids or something like that. All got a Dodge Ram pickup.
That was amazing.
They worked a deal with Dodge, I think the regional Dodge area there or whatever. They worked out a deal. So everybody on the roster got a brand new pickup truck. Now, was $60,000, $70,000, maybe $80,000 vehicle.
That's amazing. And again, at other schools, SMU gives every kid that's mm-hmm. on scholarship somewhere around $24,000, $25,000 a year,
right?
To be, if you're on scholarship.
So to your point with high school now,
yes.
Okay. So let's bring this home here for a little bit, Gary. Let's look at Vero Beach as an example. Okay, this season we've had more kids transfer in than in the history of the program. Is going forward now. Is the discussion going to be, and I don't want to speak for Coach Jay or anything like this. This is total hypothetical. Does a conversation now start to strike up of a kid reaches out to the school in some fashion and says, I would really like to come to Vero Beach, but I need some NIL money. How does that go?
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Because Coach always talks about that he doesn't talk to kids unless they're enrolled in the school.
Exactly. And again, here's the deal. It's not here yet. If it's not. And if it's, since it's not, you're doing hypothetical.
Right.
But if it were here and, the coach would have to say, well, I'd love to have you. Mm-hmm. And I said, do you have anybody else looking at you? And he says, Coach, I want to come play for you, but there's some other coaches out there that are also pretty good or are offering us money to come move my family here or pay for my transportation and everything that I come up here, drive back and forth and all like that. And so I don't know if that's how they do it. I don't know how they're going to regulate it. Like at our booster club right now, our booster club does a fantastic job. They raise money for the football team to have meals. They have after practice they have 2 or 3 where they get energy. I mean, like they get meals right after the game.
Yeah, they bring them. They have different restaurants that have work deals with them, and the booster club makes sure they have probably 3 or 4 of the booster members come out and make sure at the end of practice all the kids get some type of meal and a drink and whatnot, and they try to take care of the kids, and they do it right, and it's a good thing.
And it's expensive,
but it is expensive.
But it's what they want to do. They also have a fantastic banquet.
Yep.
At the end of the year, and then they raise money so Coach can get quality teams to come to Vero Beach. People say, why do you guys have so many games? Well, because we've got a great booster club.
You mean games at home?
Games at home.
Yeah.
And we have a great booster club. Plus, our coach goes out and offers these.
There's a lot
riches to get them to come.
There's a lot of factors into that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons. If you don't, I know we've talked about this before, but here are some of the factors that go into why do we have a lot of home games here. Number one, we have a great fan base. And, because of that, Vero Beach has done well over the years with generating revenue through ticket sales. And so it affords us to go out and talk to these schools and go, hey, look, we could come play you, and we're more than happy to come play you at your stadium. But if you come here, here's how much we'll give you. And more times than not, that number is usually higher than if we go play them at their stadium. They're going to make a little bit more money out of that. Second thing is there's a lot of coaches out there that know they don't have a big fan base, and they would very much like to give their kids an opportunity to play in front of a big crowd at some point. That's just one of the things they like to do. And so there's a lot of different reasons why, we can play, why we have a lot of different home games. Coach Jay's got a very good reputation out there. Coaches want to, come compete against him. And, when you got all of those things working for you, guess what? You know what? That's why we get a lot of home games. So
I agree. I mean, if you're going to buy me a bus buy and pay for the busing,
sure,
and you're going to pay for my post-game meal so that my kids eat when they're the game's over with and all.
Yeah.
And I don't have to spend money at my stadium. You do everything and all like that. It costs to have a home game.
Yeah.
It costs, believe it or not, with security and everything that goes with it and all. So
oh my goodness.
But Vero can afford that. And because they got a good booster club, they're able to even extend it to other teams. And other teams love coming up here to play.
So it does go to your overall point about the NIL. It's like, okay, well, I really like the focusing on the point of how do you police this? How do you govern this?
I don't know.
And there's really no way. So let's talk about something that's in play right now, okay, which is the 6-quarter rule, okay, which means an athlete at a high school can play as many as 6 quarters in a week. Well, there's really nobody out there. This is totally on an honor system basis. There's nobody out there that's really monitoring this. The only way that can be, kind of policed is if, Gary, you, as a coach, you go, you know what? I'm a JV coach. I saw this kid playing. He played 4 quarters in this game with us, and now I see him on the varsity, and he's played 3 quarters so far. I gotta file a complaint. That's the only way it'll ever happen.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you right now, most of us on the JV level and all like that, coaches, we stick by the rule. In other words, if
Sure, but I'm just saying as an example.
You can't police it. You're right. Because
the only way that anybody from the state is going to know about it is if somebody files a complaint.
You know, but we do use a lot of it's there, and the reason I think it's there is a lot of times you want to keep freshmen and your sophomores on in case you need them for an emergency. Plus, you dress them out. It keeps them from wanting to leave school and go to another school or something, too, at that age.
So the point here is that, okay, that's just a small thing.
Yeah.
And there's nobody that's, the state doesn't even say, okay, yeah, we're allowing you to do this, but we're not going to put somebody in place to keep an eye on it. We're just going to rely on honor systems. So if they're doing it for that, now you're talking about the health and safety of players.
Right.
Okay, if they're not doing it for that, how in the world? There's no way in the world they're ever going to put something in place. Because why? It's going to cost more money to hire more people to go monitor this and keep it in check.
You're talking about NIL.
For NIL.
Yeah.
There's no way that they will do that.
The NCAA can't even monitor it and regulate it.
So why is the FHSAA going to do it?
They said, listen, you guys want it. You guys are going to get it. You make your rules up, your conference, whatever it is. Don't call me. Don't tell me that it's unfair because Texas has got $2 million or $3 million in their collective, and we got 50,000, okay, or 100,000, and so don't you guys call me and say that. You guys are going to have to make your own rules, and that's just like coaches are going to have to stand up. The Nick Sabans, those guys have already started talking about, hey, this is a little bit out of control.
A little bit.
And Florida's coach, Florida did not have a say-so. The coaches didn't have a say-so. None of the coaches had an input, the state of Florida, when they originally set that up for this state. And each state's a little different than others. And so then they allowed the coaches to be involved because coaches don't want to pay for that kid, that kind of money, when they got kids they want to take care of. You can't allow a collective group to run your team.
Right.
In other words, the coach has to make that final decision.
True.
Not the collective group of it's in that committee. You can't allow them to say, Coach, we want that kid, and the coach goes, that's not the kid I want. Mm-hmm. Well, Coach, we want him.
Yeah.
So now the coach has got to say so in the state of Florida. And again, those are some of the rules and regulations that you're going to go by. Guys are going to be offered. Now they got a deal where you're being recruited, or if you go through the transfer portal, they give you an NIL value.
Yeah.
You'll see some schools or some areas will give you an NIL value on by your name, so that tells you what you're worth. So I don't know how they're going to do it in the high school. I don't know. I'm waiting to see how Georgia handles it next year with theirs, and I want to read on some of these rules and regulations and how it's monitored, and it'd be interesting.
It will be interesting, and I know we could talk about this for hours on end because it's just there's so many possibilities through all of this, Gary, and it's like, and most of them, honestly, I don't feel are any good. Truthfully, honestly,
what? I agree with you on that one, my friend. I just think it's going to be tough.
Well, I mean, look, you see it somewhat in college, and look, you're with UCF, you got a closer view than most people. What I don't think you ever really see is all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes of like the players have all of the leverage at this point between the transfer portal and NIL. I don't know how in the world coaches can ever fully, truly coach and try to, let's use the D word, discipline, these athletes, because, if somebody doesn't like what they're hearing, they can leave.
Well, it's not only it's two streets you got to go. You got to go. When you go in the transfer portal, you're losing so many guys that you've lost through graduation. Like in high school, for example, like if we go, like we're recruiting a kid out of UCF's recruiting a kid down here. If he's a skilled player, that's super. What's not being recruited as much is your offensive lineman. Because now when you go into the portal, you see a ton of linemen that have been there 2 years.
Yeah.
They've already had 2 years of weightlifting, 2 years of education. They've been there. You don't have to worry about them. Whereas a high school kid, you usually spend a freshman year, then you redshirt them, and then you bring them in. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you got them. You've got them for 4 years or 3 years of he's had 2 years of your training.
Yeah.
A lot of times coaches don't have that luxury if they're in the hot seat. You know what I mean? You're looking for most of your coaches, even though they sign 5-year contracts, it's that 3 years. If you haven't turned your program around in the third year, you're done, most of the time. So, excuse me. And so what they do is they're looking for kids in the portal. Linemen. I mean, we went out this year at UCF, and we had 3-4 kids come out of the portal on offensive line. I think we recruited maybe one high school kid.
Wow.
Out of that, but
that's crazy.
That's because we lost kids that left us, that went to Miami or went to another school.
Yeah.
And so you have to.
Why do you got to just name Miami?
Well,
come on, man.
Because you got a good one. You got our center, man. He was good.
Well, if he was so good, maybe he should have stood up and said, "Time out. We need to take a knee."
Yeah.
Come on, man.
He probably didn't want to snap the ball
either. Wow. Yeah. Well, anyway. Well, like I said, we could talk about this for quite a while, and who knows when and if. I think it probably is a matter of when it's going to hit Florida. Gary, you and I, when we first started hearing about this in college, we started talking about it's just a matter of time before it hits high school.
Absolutely.
It's the same basic concept because you're talking about an amateur athlete. And, you're not losing your amateur status. So I thought it's just a matter of time before somebody, and I kind of figured it might take a lawsuit. So I'm kind of surprised it's happened faster than that.
Again, it'll happen. It'll be, kids will be asking for transportation money or things like that.
Right.
It may ask you for $5,000 to pay for my, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, it will. It will. Well, it's been an interesting time inside the press box. Thanks.
Wait a minute, hold real quick. Martin County is a good team. We haven't talked about Martin County.
That's true. We did not talk about the Tigers.
Martin County's a good team.
Yeah.
They're what, 5-2?
5-2. Yeah.
So this ought to be we lost to them last year. We went down there.
We did. Obviously, Tyler in that game, that's where he broke his thumb on his release and hit a helmet and broke his thumb. And that really just changed the whole landscape of that game for us. So I'm sure, for Tyler, for all of the Indians from last year, this game's been sitting on their mind a little bit of revenge factor for sure. Because in spite of that, we still had an opportunity to win. Probably should have won the game, but didn't. I'll give credit to Martin County. They played a very tough-notch, run game that we just could not slow down. I expect the Tigers to probably come back out with that same mindset for this game, and I expect it to be a much tighter ball game.
Well, they're going to be playing a different Indian team.
Yes, they will.
And I think that this will be a good test. I think we're healthy. We got everybody back, and with Matt Bacon and R.J. Jones back.
Wow, did he look good?
He looked good. I mean, you're getting your team back, and you got them all together now.
Yeah.
And I really feel that Martin County better watch out and look out. I mean, because this is a good Indian football team. They're healthy.
I agree.
They're healthy.
We're trending in the right direction.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So I look for us to have a good big win on Friday night.
All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Is that it?
That's it.
You got it?
I got it. You got it now.
You want to talk about anything else?
Nope, it's yours.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. Hey, by the way, your Browns got a good win over the weekend.
Yes, they did. Over your 49ers.
Well, only one team's won it all, right?
That's exactly
went undefeated all the way through. So, Yeah, what can you say? All right. Hey, it's been good to be inside the press box. GP, PT, we'll see you next week. We'll see you actually Friday night at Martin County. It's homecoming. Make sure to get your tickets. It's going to be a good time there. And, oh, by the way, hey, the parade is coming back. good to see the parade back.
That's right. I forgot.
Yeah.
That's the old tradition.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So check on social media or whatever. They'll have all the information about when they're going to do the parade, how they're going to do all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, hey, we look forward to seeing you on Friday night. And as always, go Indians.
Thanks for joining us inside the press box. For more, go to ChristianFM.com.